Good morning, everyone. This morning, we're going to talk of birds and fish, two things that are normally not together unless one's eating the other, which is exactly why we're talking about them. So to begin, I want to start, of course, with a wonderful Hafiz poem called Carrying God. No one can keep us from carrying God wherever we go. No one can rob us of his name from our heart as we try to scale our fears and our despair, and at last accept our happiness. We do not have to leave him in the mosque or in the church alone at night. We do not have to be jealous of tales of saints and glorious intoxicated souls who can make outrageous love with the friend. We do not have to be envious of our spirit's ability, which can sometimes touch God in a dream. Our calloused palms, our open eyes, our words and mouth, and our sweating pits can all hear his name. No one anywhere can keep us from carrying the beloved wherever we go. No one can rob his precious name from the rhythm of my heart, from the rhythm of my steps, from the rhythm of my breath. That's an amazing promise, a beautiful one. And one that you can touch, anyone can touch, whether you doubt it at this moment or not, whether life has led you to that place or not, doesn't matter. If you want to investigate, you can find. It is that reality, that touchable, that experienceable, and it's promised. So this story that I wanted to look at, it's a parable of Swami Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna told this parable, and I had heard it many times, of course, and the first time you read the gospel, you'll read it. But on this second reading or third reading or whatever reading number it is, it appeared to me very different, and I wanted to share some ideas on it. And of course, try and open our hearts, because so many of us have heard so many things about spiritual life, about the divine, about our nature. And yet here we are, somehow untransformed. Here we are still somehow stuck, still running in our circles, dealing with our same problems over and over and over again. And there needs to be a time where we are able to break out of that. There needs to be a time when we know in our soul, in ourselves, that we've had enough, that the delusion has not been enough, that our ignorance is not our happiness. And we don't want to keep working for things that seem to disappear through our fingers every time we begin to enjoy them. So he begins this story. He says, in a certain place, the fishermen were catching fish. A kite swooped down and snatched a fish. At the sight of the fish, about 1,000 crows chased the kite and made a great noise with their cawing. Whichever way the kite flew with the fish, the crows followed it. He flew to the south, and he flew to the north, and the crows followed it there. The kite went east and west, but the same result. As the kite began to fly about in confusion, lo, the fish dropped from its mouth. The crows at once let the kite alone and flew after the fish. Thus, relieved of its worries, the kite sat on the branch of a tree and thought, that wretched fish was the root of all of my trouble. I have now got rid of it, and therefore I am at peace. I always interpret this as just a simple story of renunciation, saying just renounce and you'll be fine, which is true. If you're able to just renounce, you will be fine. But this story is about a process of renunciation. It's a process of discernment, a process of learning to understand. Because we know from the way Ramakrishna interprets the story, he says at the end, he says, as long as a man has the fish, and what is the fish? The fish is all worldly desire. All desires for the body and mind. He must perform actions and consequently suffer from worry, anxiety, and restlessness. Interestingly enough, that's the very curse that's presented in the Old Testament of the Bible for violating God's command in the Garden of Eden. That's the exact same curse. That as long as you have these worldly desires, as long as you're going out through the body and mind for your knowledge, for your satisfaction, and for your enjoyment, you're going to be in an endless loop, picking up things that only exist for a moment, to disappear and then have to pay again and pick them up again, only to watch them disappear again. And if we could learn that lesson, which is exactly what the kite is trying to do. The kite, by the way, is a raptor, or what do you call it, a predatory bird, like a hawk with the big talons. So the hawk it has gotten the fish, which is natural for a hawk. Now it's interesting that he steals the hawk from a fisherman. And I'll bring up later, according to a story from Aesop and some Egyptian history, that puts the kite in the same position, which I found fascinating. And we'll throw those into the mix later after we've kind of gone as far as we can with just the story here. But this kite, he's doing what kites do. We are doing what people do. We go out, we enjoy our things, we have our favorite places, our favorite foods, our favorite drinks, our favorite people, our favorite vacations, our favorite weather, just a list of preferences and desires that, as long as those conditions are met, life seems just fine. The problem is that, like the kite, we get our favorite things, we try to hold on to them, and we try all different ways to keep happy from them. We'll take them to the north, we'll take them to the south, to the east and west. We'll experiment all different ways. I always think of that when I would read in Star magazine as a teenager about these celebrities who were on their 8th and 9th marriage, and that's the image that comes to mind when we don't learn the lesson. We keep going over and over and over and over again, and we try all different things. We try always to make it a little bit better, and that's the nature of that worldly desire. You become a connoisseur. And when you started the desire, it was just a cup of coffee. I just need a cup of coffee. So you would have your cup of coffee. But after a while, somebody introduces you to a new coffee, an Arabic coffee. Oh, wow, that's a fantastic one. And you go get that. And then someone shows you a dark roast Arabic that you can only get at the corner store from the Arabian sellers directly. Oh, that's the one I must have. And then it just keeps honing in and honing in and honing in, and your desire becomes more and more particular, and it takes more and more effort to get it, and also more and more money to get it. And it goes on and on. That's the nature of all desire, whether it's lust, whether it's greed, whether it's name or fame or power. There's always somebody more. I remember in the 90s watching the constant battle between Larry Ellison and who was the Bill Gates. Back then they were the two richest men, and you would watch the stock market, and depending on who was up and who was down, one was the richest man in the world, and then the next day the other one was the richest day in the world. And I thought to myself, I bet that bothers them at some level. That you have to be at the top of the heap if that's your value, if that's the thing that brings you joy. And so even though you're sitting on a pile of $120 billion, you have to keep working mightily to stay king of the hill. That's the nature of this desire. And that's what Ramakrishna is talking about here. When the kite has simply stolen a fish to eat, and now has to constantly do all of this experimenting to try and get away from all of the anxiety and from all of the responsibility and from all of the weight that carrying that fish requires. I used to walk, the temple in San Francisco is in a beautiful location. And as a young monk, I used to walk on those streets past what is known in that city as Billionaires Row, where the wealthiest of the wealthy live there. And they're giant mansions on the hill in San Francisco overlooking the Bay Area and the downtown cityscape. Beautiful area. And the homes go from anywhere from $10 million to $30 million a year. And I was, as often you are when you walk by that every day and look at it, it creates a little bit of a tickle of desire. You think, God, it must be really nice to have a home like that. But I did a little bit of research because I knew I had to discern to keep that desire from growing and becoming an actual problem to me. And so I researched and found out that that person living in this particular home was having to come up with $180,000 a year to pay his property tax. And I thought, my God, just think of that. What a headache that would be. I have to come up with, I mean, never in my life have I come up with $180,000 in a year. And here this person was paying that in tax. And I was thinking, good Lord, what other hidden things are there that keep this person working on that wheel of samsara, working themselves to death just to afford the nicety of having a home? And when I thought about it, I thought, I bet that person doesn't spend much more time in any of the rooms. I bet his life really only probably takes up like three of those rooms. I bet he's mostly in the study, his bedroom, the kitchen, and the bathroom on occasion. And I thought, really, a home is a home. A place to live is a place to live. As long as it keeps you dry, it has a place to make your food and a place for you to lay down and sleep, that's all the desire that it can fulfill. All the rest of the desires that it fills are make believe. The idea of prestige, the idea of success, the idea of power and control. Those are all elusive. And so you see what the master is trying to tell us here through a simple bird running around with a fish. He's saying, look carefully, pay attention, enjoy your enjoyments. That's fine. Have that fish. But look closely at what it's doing to your life. Look closely at the treadmill that it has put you on. Look closely at the amount of effort it takes to maintain. And look closely at the peace of your mind when you're unable to attain it, when you're unable to have it for whatever reason, at whatever time. And he says that the kite spent so much effort in trying to figure out a way that he can enjoy that fish in a stable, quiet, peaceful environment. And he tries all different things. He tries all the directions on the compass, which is a hint to us. It's not the way that you're enjoying things that is making it unsatisfactory. It's the nature of the desire itself that is unsatisfactory. Because as Ramakrishna tells us, as all the scriptures, as all of the great teachers, gosh, from every tradition, and even those without a tradition who simply went in conquest of the divine, have found that to be the truth. That it's just the nature of desire. This world does not last. Nothing in this world lasts. And one of my favorite thoughts, which I've shared quite a bit, and it's still a really good thought for me, is the idea that anything you can pick up in this world eventually becomes potting soil. So for all of the effort that you're spending on that Macintosh, or for all the money you're spending on that car or that stereo, in time, it will be a potting soil. And what's even worse is before it becomes potting soil, it becomes an old computer. your $5,000 Macintosh from 1999 in 2021 or 2020 won't even run the operating system anymore. And that's the nature of all things. You're just constantly in need. And Ramakrishna is just trying to get us to see that here through this simple story. The kite went east and west with the same result as the kite began to fly about in confusion, which is the ultimate destination of worldly desire. Confusion. Why? Why? I've told that story in 1997, I think it was, where I had graduated from college quite a few years before that. I had my well-paying job. Life was going on just fine. I had my friends. I had my house. I had played by the rules. I had done everything that people told me a responsible person had to do. And I felt so alone in that. I remember coming home from the clubs one night and at midnight, sitting there in my room, in my bed, looking out the window at the beautiful view and thinking, what is going on? I have everything. I've played by the rules. I've done everything everyone told me to do. And in the middle of it, I feel sad. I feel alone. I feel empty. What have I done? What needs to be done? And I looked around my room, and I looked at my TV. And at that time, it was the cream of the crop. It was a 32-inch Sony Trinitron television, the biggest thing you could buy at that time. No flat screens, no 55-inch marbles like they have today. No, this thing took 4 men to deliver and carry into my house. And I thought, wow, that used to be a 10-inch black and white television when I was in college. And I don't watch anything different on it than I do on this one. And I don't enjoy the shows any more on this one than I did on that one. And I looked over and I saw my stereo. It had these 5-foot-high MB Quart speakers, the Marantz, blah, blah, blah. And I won't get bored of listing all the name brands. but it was all there. And I realized, wow, that used to be a little jam box that I used to sit on my desk. And I still listen to the same music that I listened to on my jam box. And I don't enjoy it anymore, although I can show it off to my friends. I couldn't show off my jam box to my friends. And I looked around and I saw my house. I thought, wow, look at, I've got a whole house to myself, but I can only be in one room at a time. When I was in college, I had one room off of a garage in a house in Daly City in the basement, but it was my room. And I had everything I needed in there, and I was fine. And I said, look at the condition of my life. As I go along here, things just keep getting bigger and more expensive and more particular. But my level of happiness is not increasing at the same rate. My internal peace has not changed at all. As a matter of fact, is a little bit less than it was. My free time is almost gone because of all the work that I have to do to pay the payment on the house and pay the payment on the stereo and all of these things that had just gotten bigger. And you sit there in confusion. What? I've done everything. I don't know what else to do. How life, and you begin to get that dark sense, meaninglessness, emptiness, inability to connect. And then you have to start working at keeping yourself distracted so that depression doesn't come in. You have to keep getting busier and busier, and you have to get more and more friends, and you have to go out and find more and more things to do, and your vacations every year have to get more and more elaborate, and they have to justify themselves. Now I'm going to go on educational vacations. I'm not just going to go do that type of vacation. And it just increases. And in the middle is you, alone, the same as you've always been, confused, wondering why you don't seem to be as happy as the other people at the party, wondering why you don't seem to be as thrilled with being alive as all of your friends seem to be. And they're looking at you thinking the same thing, because you, of course, are trying to be as happy as everyone else is. You're not telling anybody about your quiet time at midnight in your sorrow and sadness. So the world is an illusion, and we're caught on a treadmill. And we have to have the good sense to get off by paying attention. He goes flying about in confusion. And in that confusion, he drops the fish from its mouth. Now, interestingly enough, Thakur Ramakrishna does not say that he renounced the fish. He didn't renounce the fish. He dropped it. Some miserable thing came along, some horrible crisis came along, and I lost my house. I didn't. But, that's what he's saying here, that just by an act of nature, by an act of accident, he drops the fish. Out of the grace of God, that's where the beloved comes in. In your life, bad things happen. You lose the car that you saved up for. I just watched on YouTube a video the other day of a guy in a Lamborghini. First hour that he owns it, he's showing it off to his friends when he gets back, and he drives it into a phone pole. That is a great thing. That's you dropping the fish. That's Mother taking it out of your hands for a moment to give you a second to consider. What is the value of that thing? What was the nature of that thing? And if you are able to take that time and to think honestly, it takes a certain amount of courage to think honestly about the things in your life. When I was sitting in my bed that night and I was coming to that realization that my life was not going anywhere, that this was not the answer for a fulfilling life, there was a part of me that just wanted to roll over and go to sleep, because that suggested that at that point, 27 years of effort had put me nowhere that I wanted to be. And sometimes it's a lot easier just to roll over and stay distracted, to roll over and find another one of our playthings to keep ourselves entertained, so that we don't think deeply. We don't face the truth about our life. We don't face the truth about our situation. That we don't put ourselves in that situation to come up with a new idea, a new way of thinking, and perhaps something completely different than what we had considered before. And thank goodness, because this man here, this bird, this bird man, he says, the crows at once let the kite alone and flew after the fish. And thus, relieved of its worries, the kite sat on the branch of a tree and thought, that wretched fish was at the root of all of my trouble. I have now got rid of it, and I have found peace. You see, with that awareness, and I think that's what this story is about more than renunciation. This story is about awareness, an awareness that takes a certain amount of courage, an awareness that takes a certain amount of thinking, of discernment, of seeing the truth in things, and being able to say to yourself, this isn't it. This identity isn't working for me. This commitment isn't working to me. This life path that I've considered, these values that I've adopted are not working. And you begin to try again. You begin to look forward. And Swamiji says, Ramakrishna says, as long as a man has the fish, as long as you have these worldly desires, you must perform actions, and consequently you must suffer from worry, from anxiety, and from restlessness. No sooner do you renounce these desires and these activities fall away, and you enjoy a peace of the soul. You enjoy a freedom. You're no longer being ruled by your body and your mind. That's something we don't often realize, that we're subservient to our body. We don't think that way because we think we are our body, but in fact we're not. And when the body gets hungry, you're bound to run and get something immediately to feed it, and the sooner the better, because not only is the body demanding of you, but the mind becomes demanding of you also. You have to look into a restless and discontented mind, and you get into a bad mood. And when you're in a bad mood, everything seems bad. Everybody bothers you, even your favorite people, and you don't want to do the things that you normally like to do. And so you're bound, constantly serving your body. You have to get up every day and wash it and perfume it and groom it and dress it. And then you have to exercise it. And then you have to keep it from eating too much. And you have to keep it from eating the wrong things. And you have to keep it from eating too little. And just one thing after another comes along and keeps you distracted. But those moments when you're not distracted, you begin to think, and you begin to hurt, and you begin to understand. The interesting thing there, again, is this is just a natural part of life. It's not unnatural at all to have desire and to want to fulfill it and to go seeking. But it is natural to not discern the nature of your desire and the nature of its fulfillment. It is unnatural to keep trying the same solution over and over and over again, even though that same solution never works. That is a problem. That is the disease. And that's what's called worldliness. When you run out into the world to fulfill yourself and your desires, and you just keep getting deeper and deeper and working harder and harder and being more and more frenetic and restless, and it never occurs to you that you're on a treadmill, that's a problem. And that's what this story is all about. Because he says to an actor, he's talking to an actor, Sri Ramakrishna, later on in the gospel of his life, and he says, you are no doubt realizing the nature of worldly happiness. The world is like a hog plum. The hog plum has only pit and skin, and after eating it, you suffer from colic. It's like trying to get a glass of juice out of a raisin. It's not there. You're not going to find it there. And if you keep pressing raisins, even though you're not getting any juice from it, that's probably a definition of insanity. So take a look at your life. If someone's looking at your life with these kinds of eyes, are you insane? Are you literally going mad in this world and just looking normal because there's many, many, many mad people around you? It's very interesting here in volume 9, Swami Vivekananda says, therefore all desires of enjoyment in this life or in the life to come should be given up. People have a natural desire to enjoy. It's a natural desire, but it's not one you have to be controlled by. It doesn't have to determine the condition of your mind and the level of your internal peace. You just give it up. Walk away from it as a priority in your life. Let yourself be a little hungry. So what? It's a little hungry. I'm a little tired. So what? Nothing changes. I am who I am, and it's always the same despite the conditions of mind and body. Come to know that through discernment, through careful consideration of your mind, by spending time alone, by spending time in reflection, You don't have to be religious to do it. You just have to be perceptive. You just have to be aware. Look at the results of your actions and consider your condition in life and look at what you're building and then consider your internal peace, your internal happiness, and see where are you and how is it all going. There's a great sage that I often talk about, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, who lived in Bombay, and he held a job. He supported himself, he carried on his life, but he was a realized soul, and thousands of people went to talk to him and to find out what he had to say. And one young American disciple went to interview him and talk to him and wrote down his conversation. And it goes something like this. Maharaj, who's Nisargadatta, says, all experience is time-bound. Well, you don't have to argue with that. Whatever has beginning must have an end. Why not turn away from the experience to the experiencer and realize full import of the only true statement you can make? I am. So he's saying, why not take your attention off of all of your distractions in your worldly life? Why not take your attention off of all of the desires that are recycling through your mind all the time? Why not take your mind off of the feeling of discontentment that keeps arising when conditions aren't right and when circumstances change? And why not put your mind on who's experiencing the mind and who is experiencing the body? That part of you which has always been the same, that I am, and just leave it as I am. I said yesterday in a vlog, I made the statement that God has played a joke on us. He has us repeating his name every day, all day long, but never recognizing because we're only looking at what we're adding to his name. We spend the day saying, I am hungry, I am bored, I'm busy, I am sick. We say, I am, and we ignore that part of the sentence almost entirely. That's completely not the important part of the sentence. What's important part of the sentence to us is hungry, tired, needy, bored, busy, angry, jealous. Those are the things that we spend our time thinking about. And so here Sri Nisargadatta is suggesting the next time you say, I am hungry, he says, don't think about the hunger. Think about the I am. Spend your time focusing on that. That is the divine part of your nature. And he says, do it because there's something there that's going to surprise you. Quite striking in its impact when you begin that practice. So of course, his American disciple gets kind of excited. Says, well, how is that done? Right? Because Americans are doers. We want to know the how, what, and why immediately. Let's just go get it done. Let's finish it up. And then he says a very disturbing thing. Maharaj says to him immediately, there is no how here. This isn't a how thing, right? He says, just keep in mind the feeling I am. Just keep what you are in mind. Always go back to the fact that you exist. And let that define itself. Let that unfold. That is an amazing, inexplicable mystery that we completely ignore. That is just boundless in its implications. Just a wonderful place to sit and marvel in an awe of the miracle of being in the midst of all of this. And it's a sense that is always the same. It doesn't have ups and downs. It's not bothered by hunger or by sleeplessness or by cold or by hot. It's a steady you that has been there your whole life in every sentence that you ever said about yourself. And it is the part of you, it is the essence of you that you have never paid attention to, that you've never found a foundation in, that you've neglected quite possibly to an extreme. So he says, there is no how here. Just keep in mind the feeling I am. Merge in it. Really open to it. You see, you can't really objectify the idea of I am because the amness is the eternal subject. Everything else in the world is the object to that subject, even your body and even your mind. Who's watching your thought? Who's feeling your body? Who's using your eyes? Who's using your nose? Who cares about any of them? What is that who that we're talking about? Who is that who that we're talking about? So he's telling you, throw yourself into that idea and merge into it. Let yourself be overcome by that thought, by that understanding, by that experience. And there's so many words that we can throw in that direction, and none of them is proper, because it's not an experience, and it's not a thought, and it's not a condition. It's the isness that allows all thoughts. It's the isness that allows all conditions. So it's beyond where you normally go to get your idea of yourself. Normally, when we go to figure out who we are, we go to the mind. We ask ourselves in the mind, what do you like? What do you want? What are you interested in? What are your goals? And then we go to the body. Oh, look, I'm a man. Oh, look, I'm an old man. Oh, look, I'm a rich man. I'm a poor man. I'm a fat man. I'm an ugly man. I'm a beautiful woman. All of these different ideas of self come when you query the body and query the mind. Stop querying. Stop asking other things what you are. And be that isness. Sink into that sense of being that allows all of those identities, that can absorb all of them, and really is unconcerned and unaffected by all of them. So he's saying here, he says, there is no how. Just keep the feeling in mind. I am. Merge in it until your mind and feeling become one. All right? Till the two become one. That means that there's that understanding that the I am is not object, that it's subject, and that it has its own seeming characteristics. The sages say that it's of the nature of love. It's what allows you to love. It's what allows you to care. It's what allows you to feel. It's what allows you to exist, to experience existence. It's what makes sense of all the thoughts that you have. It is your intelligence. All of the pictures and images and feelings and information coming from the body and mind that are kind of thrown up on the wall of the I am. The I am is able to discern all of those things and able to know their meaning, able to know their implications, able to know their nature. So this I am is an amazing place to be, an amazing thing to understand, and an incredible power to learn how to wield, how to use. He says, so until your mind and feeling become one, by repeated attempts, you will stumble on the right balance of attention and affection, and your mind will be firmly established in the thought feeling, I am. Whatever you think, say, or do, this sense of immutable and affectionate being remains as the ever-present background of the mind. Do you see the beautiful way he described the nature of this ever-present being? This sense of immutable, it doesn't change, it's unchanging. And what is the nature of that unchanging? It is affectionate, it is warm, it is loving, it is sensitive, it is caring, it is peaceful, it is tranquil, it needs nothing for itself. That's the nature of your I am before it hits the needy mind and the hungry body. That's the nature, this unchanging, immutable, affectionate self, that you love so much, that you confuse with personality, that you confuse with body and mind. That is what you love, and that is what allows you to love. It's where all the love you have to give comes from, and it's endless. You have an infinite amount of love to manifest and to give. He goes on to say here that this, of course, that last thing that he says, that it's the ever-present background of the mind. See, that's the reason we don't see it, because it's the background. It's the white noise. We've tuned it out. We don't pay attention to it because it is immutable. It's not changing. So it can't call your name. It can't jump up and down and say, hey, pay attention to me. It's just sitting there casually going on, casually being in that sense, in that background noise. Then the questioner says to him something very interesting, this young American man. He says, the memory of my wonderful experiences haunt me. I want them back. He's saying, so he's saying, see, this is the difficulty. Now it's interesting. Who would you think that you would describe something wonderful as haunting you? You see, even in the way that he makes his sentence, he betrays a truth about the nature of his desires that he's deluded into thinking are wonderful, and yet their effect on him is haunting, constantly bothering, very much like the crows around the kite in the story. That they just, it's keeping you unsettled, keeping you constantly busy and constantly looking around everywhere. So, the memory of my wonderful experience haunts me. I want them back. Maharaj, because you want them back, you cannot have them. The state of craving for anything blocks all deeper experience. Nothing of value can happen to a mind which knows exactly what it wants. There's a few interesting things in there. Because you want it back. Now that's the problem. That's how we fall into this treadmill effect, this turning wheel of samsara, according to the Buddhists, is the fact that no matter how great of a time you had at the party, it's done when the party's over. And all it does is leave an echo in the mind called your memory of that party that only provides one function. And that is to send you on the conquest to find another party that was just as good, that was just as fun. So all of your desires, that's the haunting nature of them. All they do is leave an echo in the mind of what they were. And that echo in the mind will drive you to repeat the experience. And you will be bound to repeat that again and again and again. And pretty soon after you've done it enough times, you don't even need the good party to cause the echo anymore. The echo is permanent. It sits there in the mind. And when you're sitting there having nothing to do in your room, the old memory of a good party will come up. Oh, those were the days. Oh, that was the time. And you will lie to yourself and say, I was so happy then. You weren't happy then at all. You were distracted from your sadness then. You were distracted from your loneliness then, but you were on the treadmill, running after echoes, falling in love with a dream that couldn't stay permanent and cannot be real in that sense, can never be depended on. And if you live a life built on things that cannot be depended on, you end up very insecure. You end up very unsure. You end up bitter and afraid, actually. So he says the state of craving for anything blocks all deeper experience. That is very important. That's the reason that beginning spiritual practice seems like, why would I want to do that? Go sit and listen to a lecture? Oh, thank you. No, not today. Oh, it's a beautiful Sunday morning. No, I'm not going to do that. Not that it's necessary, but that's the nature of having to undo what you've done. A lot of us will sit and do a few weeks, but see, you've been practicing worldliness for how many years? How many years, how many hours a day have you put into serving the body and serving the mind? And then you think that a half an hour a day of meditation is going to undo that somehow, or an hour of meditation, or offering a few things at the shrine, or making a few deals with God is somehow now going to put you into bliss. And so you put in your pittance, your half hour a day, your 20 minutes every day. And some days you miss it, because happy hour got in the way. And then after you've been living like that for 5 years, you're like, well, there's nothing to this religion thing. Where's my joy? Where's my bliss? Where's my happiness? You were content to spend 30 years in the world, and now you want happiness in 10 minutes of meditation. Not how it is. You have some work to do. You have some work to do to undo the echoes, to quiet the mind, to train yourself to take your eyes off of the needy body and the needy mind, and to pay attention to that silent, contented, affectionate self that has been the background to all of it. There's some work to be done. And he says, as long as you keep paying attention to the craving, as long as you keep yourself in a state of neediness, which is only a condition of mind, there's nothing profound there. It's only an interest in the echoes of the mind. Stop being interested in the echoes of the mind, because they are blocking you from all deeper experience, he says. You can't hear the music of your divinity when you're jamming out on the metal of the mind, as it were. You can't do it. That's why they are counter to each other. Desire and peace don't live in the same house. Contentedness and want are not cohabitors. It cannot be. Nothing of value. Now that's quite a statement he's starting here. Nothing of value can happen to a mind which knows exactly what it wants, because that exactly what it wants is an echo. There is nothing that the mind exactly wants. It's just holding up an echo of a time when it was distracted into pleasure and saying, that's what I want. And as long as you have the idea that what you want lies outside of yourself, you will be a slave. You will be bound. You'll have to keep working 8, 10, 12 hours a day to pay for all of the different forms that those things that you think fulfill you, but in the end only distract you, are calling for. So he says here, nothing of value can happen to a mind which knows exactly what it wants. A mind that's paying attention to the echoes and to the memories of pleasure, the memories of distraction. Nothing can happen, of nothing of value. And what will happen is, if you don't get serious about the quest, if you don't take it seriously, then your religion itself becomes your conditional desire that you turn to for your pleasant little feelings and for your pleasant little securities. But it never amounts to that being. It never amounts to that lasting satisfaction, that lasting contentedness, that enormous love that flows out of, in equanimous, infinite proportions, of the lovers of God, the lovers of the divine. And when that happens, the world never forgets. We know Buddha, we know Rama, we know Krishna, we know Jesus, we know Ramakrishna. And why? Because their mark was extreme. They touched the heart of all of us. They touched and reminded us of a self that we intuitively know. And so for thousands of years, we remember these people. We remember them for their love. We remember them for wisdom. So he says, nothing of value can happen to a mind which knows exactly what it wants. He says, your aims are small and low. All the things of the body, small and low, selfish, little things. They do not call for more. Only God's energy is infinite. Because he wants nothing for himself. Be like him, and all your desires will be fulfilled. Now, this is a very interesting sentence because, for those of you who are Vedantins, Sri Nisargadatta was a Jnani. And how rare is it for a Jnani to be telling you to find your contentment in God, to listen to God, and to be like God. But here you go. Here's our Jnani, our man of knowledge, our man of philosophy and understanding, Sri Nisargadatta, enlightened, saying, be like God, and all your desires will be fulfilled. Want nothing for yourself. See yourself in all and serve that self in all. Give everything. The higher your aims and the vaster your desires, the more energy you will have for their fulfillment. As that divinity who wants nothing for himself, your desire is for everyone else. He says, if you live that way, you will have infinite energy. Every act of giving will energize you and inspire you. And every bit that you give you'll have more to give. He promises that. Christ says that too. Actually, St. Paul says that in the scriptures also, that the more you give, the more you'll receive, and you'll receive more than you give. I know a young monk in one of the monasteries I lived in the past, who used to go out on walks in the afternoon, and he was given a monthly salary. It wasn't a salary, but he was given $80 a month by the monastery to kind of take care of his personal needs. And this monk, he would go out on this walk, and he would give it away because he used to live in a monastery that didn't give him anything. So he would go out there and he would give it away, just try and find nice things to do with it. And then somebody found out that he was doing this on his own. And suddenly, when they saw him on a Sunday at a lecture, they gave him an envelope. And in that envelope was a $100 bill with a note that says, "Here, this is something more for you to give away." And you see how that happens. That's the promise of the divine. If you start giving, if you start caring, if you start reaching out, that's where the energy comes alive, because it's what you are. It's who you are. It's your nature. And when you begin to give and you begin to invest in care in others, the money that you need to meet the needs of others will simply appear, because everybody wants to get involved with somebody who's doing something to make the world a better place. Everybody wants to be a part of that. Why? You don't have to be a scholar to figure it out. It's because it's what you are, and you have ignored that your whole life by focusing on the pleasant and not on the good. That is the challenge. He says, the higher your aims, the vaster the desire to give, the more energy you will have for their fulfillment. Desire the good of all, and the universe will work with you. Desire the good of all. No more of this nonsense, America first, make America great. It's make us all great, make the world great, make your hometown great, make everything great. Expand your boundaries upon a bigger and broader than these petty little ideals of what we think we are. These little things that, I'm straight and therefore I hate gay people. I'm white, I hate black people. I'm an immigrant and I suffer. We have all of these ideas of self that put up these nonsensical boundaries that then express our conditions of mind and limit the infinite love that we express. Tear them down. That's what the story of the kite is about. Drop them all. Drop them. And be free. Find that peace of mind, that infinite well of energy and inspiration and love that comes from only you. But if you want your own pleasure, you must earn it the hard way. Before desiring, deserve. Become something beautiful. Become something beautiful, and you won't have to work at it. If you are something beautiful, people take care of you, because it's their nature. They will see that divine in you. That's why, despite all of the bad press, despite all of the bad opinions, despite all of the counter arguments, religion has always been there. Because at the fundamental root of it, it's true. You are that infinite divine self, ever free and ever pure. So if you live for the desire and good of all, the universe will work with you. If you want your own pleasure, earn it the hard way. Before desiring, deserve. To earn a livelihood, some specialized knowledge is needed. General knowledge develops the mind, no doubt. But if you are going to spend your life in amassing knowledge, you will build a wall around yourself. To go beyond the mind, a well-furnished mind is not needed. What he's saying there is something very profound, that yes, learning and developing the mind is important in order to gain mastery over it, in order to make it manageable. But to go beyond it, it's not necessary. Many illiterate people have realized the divine, have found that secret of life that's hidden within us all. So this well-furnished mind is not necessary. It's not a matter of what you know. And that's an important thing to understand, because a lot of us will get involved in religion or philosophy and treat it as such. We'll sit there and talk about the finer points of samadhi when we're lifetimes away from needing to know that piece of information. We'll sit there and pull the scriptures apart for the exact meaning of this particular Sanskrit word that was said at a certain time in a certain flavor and context, and remember that. And yet the way that we live is selfish. And yet the way that we live is completely non-different from any neighbor we've ever lived next to. That's not religion. That's not spiritual life. That's not spiritual growth. It is not about building thought castles of philosophy in your mind. It's not about thinking that somehow you're going to understand the nature of the world with the petty little brain you've been given to work with. It's not where it's going to happen. It happens transcendentally, beyond the mind, because the mind can only work with limitations. The mind can only work with restrictions. The mind can only function with a sense of other. And none of those things are the nature of the reality, the isness of being, the indivisible I am. You will never find it there. It's in silence that it manifests. It's in a quiet mind that it manifests. It's in a person's heart who has taken their interest away from the echoes of mind and body and put it on that one ever-present, quiet, eternally peaceful self. Therein lies all of this wonder, all of this magic, all of this inspiration. So our young American disciple says, then what is needed? Oh my God, that sounds amazing, but what do I need? What do I have to do? He says, distrust your mind. Now, it's not saying become paranoid about your mind. Distrust it means don't place your trust in it. Don't believe that that's where the answers lie. Be willing to set it down for a moment and try something you've never tried before. He says, go beyond. Had you even been aware that there's something beyond mind? And when somebody says that to you, do you have any idea of how to do that? And of course you don't, because it's not a how. This is an isness. Stop jumping into your mind and identifying it with yourself. That's all. So it's a stopping, not a doing. It's a retraction of ignorance and not an adding of knowledge. What shall I find beyond the mind? The direct experience of being, knowing, and loving. The direct experience of knowing, being, and loving. Now, what does he mean by direct experience? There's no way you can know in the deluded state. Why? Because the only way that you know, be, and love is by asking something else. You ask the mind, you ask the body. You're always going to someone else for your information. And the information that you get is always interpreted. What does that mean? We've talked about that before. Your brain is in a black box. There's nothing in there. It's in a cranium, sealed all around. And yet when you look at that light, you see light. How can a brain see light? The nerves of the eyes don't transmit light. They go through a tiny hole at the back of the socket and then into some skin and nerve tissue. There's no light there. So you have never seen a light. You have never had a direct experience of light. What you are seeing is a symbol created by your mind for light. And it's the same with every sensual thing that you perceive. None of it goes directly to the mind as it is. All of it gets interpreted into nervous signals that make their way to the mind along the spinal cord, actually. But none of it is the thing itself. All of them are interpretations. And the problem with that is that when you love somebody, you don't want to love a mental symbol of them. You don't want to touch a mental symbol of them. You want to touch them, and yet it is impossible for you to do so as long as you're trying to do it through the body and mind. Cannot be done. And the first time that you have an experience that is direct, uninterpreted, you will never be the same again. You will never be the same again. How does one go beyond the mind? There are many starting points, many ways to do it, he says. He lists 3 here, but he says they all lead to the same goal, and this is what keeps your mind open about religion. There are many ways, and they all lead to the same goal. So don't put any more of the mind's restrictions on your spiritual life. That is the bane of religion. That is the failure of religion, that it creates more boundaries when its aim and goal is oneness, when its aim and goal is freedom. How dare we allow our egos to use our religions to cause division and to cause competition and to cause judgment and to cause hate? How dare us do such a thing? There are many ways, he says, and they all lead to the same goal. He said, 1, you may begin with selfless work. Abandon the fruits of action. Don't think about why you're doing things. Do them for their own sake, and do them in knowledge and in love and in presence, being there, doing them with all of your energy. So stop thinking about past, present, and future, and think about the moment that you have eternally inhabited. Think about this moment that has always been, and live here. Stop living in the past. Stop living in the future. Live here, and do what you're doing for just its own sake, not for anything. To do something for something is to live in the future. To do something because of something is to live in the past. Do something just for the sheer joy of experiencing the doing in the present moment, in being, in manifesting. Do it with love, do it with intelligence, and enjoy the being. 2, you may then give up thinking and end in giving up all desires. Here, giving up is the operational factor. It means stop doing things that are stupid. If they don't work, stop. You know, if going out to dinner didn't make you happy for the rest of your life, stop looking for happiness there. It's only a distraction. If going to those great parties isn't making you happy the whole week, don't look for your happiness in parties. If the fruit of what you're doing only leaves echoes in your mind that leave you wanting more, unless you enjoy the state of hunger, unless you enjoy the state of always needing more, stop it. Stop it. Not because it's right, not because the Bible says so, not because somebody's going to yell at you, but because it's true. It's rational. It is what it is. See it that way and act accordingly. You can say grow up, or you can say be sane. They're the same thing. Do it. And that's the challenge. Number 2. Or number 3, or you may not bother about anything you want or think or do, and just stay put in the thought of feeling I am, focusing I am firmly in your mind. So he's saying be fully present, be fully aware of what you're doing. That's the state of the bird in the story. The bird becomes fully aware of himself, and he sees clearly the results of his actions. The world becomes his teacher. His experiences become his teacher. His daily life become his scripture. He begins to understand and know simply because he's not whirling around in distraction. He's being present and seeing things as they are, and holding on to the courage to change accordingly, to let go of the things that don't work and open to the things that do. All kinds of experience may come to you. Remain unmoved in the knowledge that all perceivable is transient, and only the I am endures. Yeah, everything in the world changes. You're going to drop the body at some point. If your body has been the source of all of your pleasure, where will old age be for you? How horrifying death will be for you. But if you can find this I am within you, this you that is before any of your attributes or characteristics, this you that is watching and playing with all of the things at its disposal, if you can find that by letting go of everything else, then you have found the gold that all of the world's scriptures promise, and the reason that religion has been unkillable through thousands of years, and why it is and always will be our highest ideal of life, of being, of humanity, and the reason that those have seen its fulfillment will always be remembered. Till the end of time, we will talk of Buddha and Jesus and Krishna and Rama and Ramakrishna. So just for fun, we're going to change gears here a little bit for the last, it's almost time. But it's interesting, the kite, I didn't know what a kite was. I never heard the word until I read this story actually many years ago. So I looked it up, and it's that raptor. And interestingly enough, Aesop's fables in ancient Greece there have a story of the kite that he also ate fish, but he didn't steal his fish from the altar. He stole, or from the ships. He stole his food from the altars in the temples. And so a kite, who had been ill for a long time, begged of his mother to go to all of the temples in the country and to see what prayers and promises could do for his recovery. His old mother replied, "My son, unless you can think of an altar that neither of us has robbed, I fear that nothing can be done for you in that way." The moral of the story, since Aesop's fables always have a moral, is this: nothing but the conscience of a virtuous life can make death easier to us. Wherefore, there's no trusting in the distraction of an agonizing and deathbed repentance. So, if you don't live wisely, which is the same as living with awareness, there's no value in a deathbed repentance. It's like your desires, interestingly enough, and this goes to the Gita. We'll close with the verse from the Gita, where he says, work, this is chapter 3 in the Gita, verse 10, if you want to look it up yourself. Work must be done as a sacrifice to the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties without being attached to the results for the satisfaction of God. So this is the exact same recommendation that Sri Nisargadatta was giving to our young American disciple. In the beginning of creation, Brahma created humankind along with duties and said, prosper in the performance of these sacrifices, for they shall bestow upon you all that you wish to achieve. By your sacrifices, the celestial gods will be pleased, and by cooperation between humans and the celestial gods, prosperity will reign for all. The celestial gods, being satisfied by the performance of sacrifice, will grant you all the desired necessities of life. But those who enjoy what is given to them without making offerings in return are verily thieves. This idea, if you're doing things for yourself with no consideration of the I am that is in us all, the well-being of all, you're stealing. You're stealing. And if you're stealing from the gods, the I am in us all, if you're concerned about yourself above everyone else, then you are not doing your duty as a human being, as a person in this world, honoring that I am in everyone and everything, sharing what you are and what you've been given, because without all of these things, you can achieve nothing. If you have nothing to plant, you cannot harvest. So the idea of a self-made man is ridiculous. All of us live on the work and performance of others. And all of us, you can say in one sense, are indebted to all of us, to that I am. Call it God, call it the I am in all of us, call it your fellow man. But be a human and take everyone into consideration above yourself. Learn to give. Let go of the echoes of your own mind, your own limitation, and find the infinity of inspiration. Find the endless supply of love and learn how to give it equanimously in the same way that the rain falls on everyone and the sun shines on everyone. Man is infinite, Swami Vivekananda says, and this limitation in which he exists now is not his nature. But through these limitations, he is struggling upward and forward until he reaches the infinite, the unlimited, his birthright, and his nature.